To order. Roll call. Ms. Vrashich. Here. Mr. McDonald. Here. Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Scown.
Here.
Mr. Bush. Here. Ms. Reese. Here. Mr. D'Ambrosia. Here. Mr. Costa. Here. And the chair is present. First of all, before we go any further, I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 2, review of amended land development and subdivision regulations. Mr. Modica?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn this over to our consultant,
Yes.
Ashley Sweet from Weston and Sampson.
Good evening, everyone. So we're here tonight to go over the subdivision regulation draft with you with the amendments that have been made. I'm having a little technical difficulty pulling this up.
Can you speak up a little louder, please?
Yes, I
Yep,
agree.
sorry. So we're here tonight to go over the subdivision regulation changes that we were asked to amend for state law. And I am just having a moment of technical difficulty where I'm not pulling up the document. So give me a second. Here we go. Just give me 1 second. And we can walk through this at your, direction. If you'd like to go by section, we can do it that way. Or if there are specific sections that you want to go through in more detail, we can also do that. And this is opening, so just 1 more second. How would you like to go? Do you want to walk through section by section?
How does the
And
board?
then if there are questions, we can stop at that section and talk through them and then move on.
Everybody in agreement, section by section? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right, so the first section is definitions in section 2. And we have amended several of your definitions to respond to the changes in state law. I don't know if there are any specific questions about any of those definition changes. We could discuss them.
Does anyone have any questions on the definitions?
Administrative officer, been signed, or how's that?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, Ken.
Who is the administrative officer, or is that,
It's going to be myself and the new town planner.
okay.
I have a question.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you. Some of these, or all of these, the changes, were any of them discretionary? I guess what I'm getting at is, in looking at these, if the changes were made as mandated by state law, there's almost no need to discuss it. It is what it is, I think. But anything that's discretionary, if you could highlight that.
So we didn't make any discretionary changes, and I don't believe that Glenn made any discretionary changes to the definition. So everything that you're seeing in here is to reflect a requirement in state law. So
Okay.
certainly we could discuss, if there are questions about meaning, but we really couldn't make any substantive changes to what's here.
The only discretionary was what Mr. Bush asked, and that we added the town planner and the director as administrative officers, but that's it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Butler?
I just had a question about the TRC. So there's one public member that's appointed by the planning board, but it doesn't kind of outline that appointment process. And I ask only because I've seen town council meetings when there's been several applicants for one position, and there's always kind of this discussion about the best way and how to vote and who's going to do what and when they're going to. So I didn't know if you've seen in other cities and towns where they've kind of laid out a process of like the application deadline, how that's going to be handled, is it, voting process or?
The planning board is required to adopt rules of procedure, basically for the technical review committee. You could put language in there about how someone is selected and chosen, or if there are specific criteria for that member of the public. You could lay those out in the policies and procedures.
I think it may be helpful down the line to do that, just so that there's a kind of a consistent process.
We were a little preemptive, and we did put an ad in the Valley Breeze for that position, and we received one resume from a gentleman who seems to be very qualified in
Yeah, so
terms
if
of
there's
land
just one,
development.
it's easy, but as I said, I know sometimes luckily you get sometimes multiple candidates, and if there's not like a process agreed to ahead of time, it can get a little messy.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McDonald?
just a comment, if this individual proves to be appropriate, and let's say for argument's sake he was appointed, I think there's still something to be said for having something formally in place, because at some point there's going to be a change, I would assume. And just to have something in place, and I'm not saying it has to be sophisticated, but it should be laid out exactly the process, an examination of resumes, determination of who's going to be interviewed, how that might be done, letters sent out to those that don't get an interview, thanking for their interest, et cetera. So,
Mrs. DeBrosa?
So with the planning board being tasked with setting up the policy and procedures for the TRC, would the TRC be able to, assuming you have a person who can fulfill that civilian role, would the TRC be held up by us until we get something set up, or it can go on its own? Okay.
Anyone else? Line 15 to 19, and for the TRC, it outlines that the members would be the planning chair, building, zoning, public works, fire, and what about public safety?
Just for this. So when we were talking about the various attendees, we thought that in most circumstances, the fire department was the most relevant to planning-related issues because of access, so, and turnarounds and things like that. So aisle widths, just, you can always invite any other department head. When I say you, the TRC or the planning director can always invite other departments as the case, calls for it. But we thought, as a general rule, it was important to have a member of the fire department on it.
So if the TRC had a question where they think they need to consult with public safety, then they can just do that.
Yeah, obviously fire is part of public safety, but,
Right, yeah.
but yeah, if they thought that the EMS was important to speak with, or the police department was important to speak with, depending on the use maybe, they could seek their recommendation.
Okay.
And even their attendance at a meeting.
Well, I was thinking along the lines of traffic and so on. In one of our recent applications here, we got some comment back from the police department regarding some potential issues.
Yep.
That's what I was kind of getting at. But that's fine, as long as there's an avenue that if you needed to consult with somebody from the police department, we could do that.
Yeah, so the planning department can always seek comments from every department, and then whoever wants to weigh in can weigh in. And maybe that's a policy that the planning department could implement.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we plan on having as many people as possible at those meetings, as many departments.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Just a question, on the administrative officer, and you said that yourself or the town planner, is it either or?
It's both. Either one can sign off on minor subdivisions or minor land development or administrative subdivisions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. but-
Any other questions on the definition section?
I think we're good.
Okay. The next section is section 3, administration of the regulations. We added language here for the administrative officer stating that they are authorized to issue decisions on applications as, per the subdivision regulations, and that they serve as the chair of the technical review committee. There was a change under the section 3B related to notice. And please, if at any point anyone has a question, just, stop me. So we updated that notice section to comply with state law. And then the next change is just adding some clarifying language under the findings that includes development plan review, and changing board to permitting authority, because now we have both the administrative officer and the planning board making decisions. And then the next section would be 3G. This is where we took an existing section that discussed precedents of approval, and we inserted unified development review into this section. That's the process by which an applicant needs a special use permit or a variance as part of a development application before the planning board. The planning board is now authorized to grant that variance or that special use permit. So this establishes unified development review. The process is underneath it in terms of how an applicant submits for unified development review, when the submission happens, what the timeframes are, and what the criteria for making a decision on that on that variance or that special use permit is. And I'll pause there because this is brand new and a lot of language, so if there are any questions.
Before we go any further.
Yep.
3B, regulations 29, line 29. It says the town will shall.
Yep, it does.
Just a housekeeping thing.
Yep, good catch. It's 14. Would you prefer a will or a shall there for notice? Okay, so we're gonna get rid of the will. Okay. We'll go back down to unified development review if there are any questions there.
Here, 3G here, page 16. Any questions? Are we all set?
Okay. So the next section we have is we made changes to the section 3H, that's waivers, modifications, and reinstatements of plan. Here we made some amendments related to the waiver. We deleted section 1. And I need to remove the strikeouts for the numbers on 2 and 3 here, but we didn't change those sections. And then on reinstatement of plans, meeting votes, decisions, and records, we did not make any changes to those sections.
only see minor on page 16, is major addressed in that? I just don't remember it, and I've been to see it a long time.
So it's on,
You don't have to tell me, just yes or
just
no.
below it, there's C is major.
For unified development, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if there are no questions, I'll keep moving.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
3H, so that says waivers, modifications, and reinstatement of plans. But then 3I is reinstatement of
Yeah, I
plans.
saw that too. I need to double check that.
And it doesn't look like there's anything about reinstatement of plans within 3H.
Yeah, we may not need that. I'm gonna make a note here and we will look at that and make sure.
So we should just get out that from the title, and
Yeah, I want to double check why, but that may be as simple as removing it from the title. So the next section that we changed was, we changed 3L. We actually changed this to modifications and changes to approved or recorded plans. And we added language in here that explains, that it's a similar procedure to when this is an application that's somewhere in the process, there can be a modification between a master and a preliminary, or a preliminary and a final, and you can do that through a modification process. And so we've added that to the existing section. Are there any questions before I keep moving?
Any questions?
Okay, the next section is 3M. This was previously right of appeal, but we've specified this is appeals from the decision of an administrative officer, and this outlines the two appeal processes for the decisions that the administrative officer makes. When the decision is related to an application, making an approval or denial of an application, that's an appeal that goes directly to the Superior Court now. Decisions of the administrative officer related to things like an interpretation in the regulations, those appeals still go to the zoning board of review. So that's what's outlined in this section.
Line 33.
Yeah.
It says, shall state clearly and unambiguously, I'm gonna tongue tie myself, unambiguously, the issue of, you scratch out of and then or decision.
Yep.
And then line 34, it says the appeal shall either by sent by.
30, you said line 34?
34, yeah.
So he said.
Be sent by. Yep.
Okay.
Some of this, honestly, we should check these because some of these, I think, are existing spelling errors, because
Yeah.
we took a Word version
Right.
from the town. But we can certainly fix them. We didn't touch anything other than what was required, so, but we can make that right.
Would have any questions at this point? Okay,
Okay?
we're good?
All right, the next section is appeals to Superior Court, and this basically just outlines when a decision of the planning board or the administrative officer is appealed when they are rendering a decision on an application. That is an appeal that goes to Superior Court, and this just mimics the state law process for that.
Can I ask a question?
Mr. McDonald?
Maybe I'm confused. It says here, appeals of the planning board decisions will go directly to Superior Court instead of the ZBR. Yet on 3M, line 27, 8, and 9, it's got decisions by the administrative officer shall proceed directly to Superior Court. I must be missing something. So decisions by the admin officer and the planning board go directly to Superior Court.
Only, so appeals of appeals of a decision of the planning board go directly to Superior Court. Appeals of the administrative officer, when they are approving or denying an application, go directly to Superior Court. Appeals of a decision of the administrative officer other than an approval or denial of an application go to the zoning board.
Okay, I get that.
That's why we have them in two separate sections, because it's not this exactly the same.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the distinction.
Nope, not at all. It's a lot of stuff. So the next section is section 5. This is review and approval of plans and plats. We've slightly modified language here on the types of applications. We've taken out the language about a public informational meeting. Those no longer exist. And we've made some amendments to development plan review to reflect the changes in state law for that, and minor changes to a certification of completeness. And then we've made the changes here we've added a section here for public hearing and notice to cover all public hearing requirements across, instead of repeating, in multiple sections. We just have one section now that consolidates the public hearing requirements because they have been unified across all types of public hearing. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Good to go?
Okay. The next section is pre-application meetings. We've just made some minor adjustments to that section. And then we have administrative subdivision. I don't believe we made any changes there. And then we have minor land development and minor subdivision. We've made changes here. We've added sections to each of the types of review process that explain, again, applications requesting relief from the zoning ordinance. There's two different types. There's now a modification and there's unified development review. So that's explained in that first section B. And then we've got some additional minor changes in each of the sections underneath related to certifying the application complete. The notice just references the section 5D that we added. And then we've just added some clarifying language under decisions, and we added a section on modifications and changes to plans, and then refer you back to that section 3L that we modified. And again, just clean up language in the remainder of the sections under this item. And then we've essentially done the same thing under major land development and major subdivision review. We made some changes to the number of days permitted to make a decision and to certify. Those are not changes from this past session, they're changes from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So we just made those updated to current state law. Again, removing the section on informational meeting and replacing that with the public hearing. Added some language here under technical review committee. And then under preliminary plan, added a section related to state permits. And then took out the public hearing from the preliminary plan section because it moved to master plan, and again, referencing the technical review committee. We made updates to the vesting. That also was changed even longer ago, five years ago, maybe. So we made that compliant. We took out the public hearing and notice section here, because we moved all of that and consolidated it in an upper section. I think it's 5D. I'll pause if there are any questions.
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Decision, okay. It says, this is page 31, starting with line 1. Planning board shall, within 90 days of certification of completeness or within such further time as may be consented by the applicant, approve the master plan as submitted. And then 2 paragraphs below, it says vesting, the approved master plan shall be vested for a period of 2 years. If you go to the, to this section, under 5H, it says, shortens the AO review time from 60 days to 25 days for master and preliminary plan, shortens the planning board review time to 90 days from the certification of completeness for each stage. So is it, we have to approve it within 90 days of it being approved, of the plan being approved, by the application being approved? Okay,
Certified complete.
okay. But then they have 2 years to bring it before us for the preliminary review, is that correct? It's not another 90 days, it seems like it says for each stage here, it seems like it would be for.
So both so the master plan stage, you have to make a decision within 90 days when the application is certified complete. And then again, for preliminary plan, they have another 90 days, but you have another 90 days
From the time
that the administrative committee certifies an application complete.
well, once it's certified complete, we go to master.
It's the same process for both stages.
Although what it says here, if they're vested for 2 years, do they have 2 years to bring it back to preliminary, or
It's the vesting of the final plan?
or the final plan? Okay.
Well, this is the vesting of the master plan.
Oh,
So the
sorry.
master
Okay.
plan, so once the application's certified complete, it goes to you on an agenda for review. And from the date that it's certified, you have 90 days to issue your decision. Once you issue your decision on a master plan, so if you approve the master plan, they then have 2 years before they have to return to you with a preliminary plan, although they can come and get an extension.
Right, okay, so obviously it's not 90 days between master and preliminary,
No.
unless they choose to do it.
I mean, they could come back that quickly,
Right.
but they don't have to.
If they bring it before us for master on the 90th day, and we have problems with the plan, we have to approve it, or it gets automatically approved, or what happens then? I mean, we wanna see it another week, maybe another,
So
because there's
my-
a lot of issues with it.
The best practice is to never have a decision on the date that it expires.
Right.
Always try to have your decision date in advance of the 90 days so that if you need to continue the item, you still have time to continue it. You need at least 48 hours in between so that you could repost an agenda to continue an application.
Yeah, I'm
And
certain our planning board wouldn't put it on the docket 90 days out, so we'd have, one shot at it. But what if the applicant puts it off until 90 days?
well, the applicant that won't be possible because the application's already been submitted to the planning department and Glenn has 25 days to certify it complete.
Right.
Once it's certified complete, Glenn is gonna put it on the next agenda. He's not gonna hang on to it and wait
No, I
90
don't think-
days.
What, I'm not talking about him, I'm talking about what if the applicants
They can't,
delays for some reason they can't?
they can't.
Okay,
Once it's submitted, it's in Glenn's hands to
Right.
put it on the agenda.
okay,
I mean, if they ask for a continuance and it doesn't get on the agenda, then I'm sure the advice of your administrative officer will be, the applicant requested a continuance, your time clock is now shortened to 30 days. The applicant should grant you an extension of the 90 days.
okay.
But I think, so the example I'm thinking about is BVP, because that took much longer than 90 days. And I think at the end of every meeting, Kelly just got agreement from the other side that we're gonna pause we're all agreeing that the clock is gonna go beyond 90 days, and that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree to that, we'll just reject the master plan, and then you'll have to start all over again. So I think that's kind of
Yes.
the wiggle room that we have.
You have the ability to ask for them to extend the time clock. They don't have to agree, but if you don't have all the information you need to make a decision, then they're kind of forcing your hand.
Mr. McDonald?
I guess I just want to hear this. The issue of the time clock, this doesn't change any of that. If there can still be an agreement between the town and an applicant to extend the clock, is that
Yes.
correct?
The only change we made to this was to change 120 days to 90 days because that was changed several years ago.
Okay, I only ask it because if you do have an applicant of bad faith,
Yep.
they can jam the town.
I'll tell you a 30-second story about an applicant of bad faith. I had an applicant come, he knew the time clock was running out the day after the meeting, and he intentionally overfilled the chambers so that it was over capacity, so that we could not hold the meeting in an attempt to get an approval by default. Fortunately, we got wind of it ahead of time and moved the meeting, but he was not happy. That was his intent. He called every person he knew and he overfilled the meeting room so that he would get an approval by default. So that is why I say, always get it on an agenda at least a couple of days before your time clock runs out, so that you can fix something like that.
And we had a similar situation going back a few years. Not exactly like that, but very similar. The applicant was put on the agenda for a particular meeting. They they didn't show up, they didn't want to appear that night. And then the next month, they said, well, it's automatically approved. And I argued, I said, we were here last month, we were prepared and ready to hear your application and act on your application. You chose not to be on the agenda afterwards. And then the lawyers, did their little,
Yep.
conference with the applicant, and they said, okay. But it's a very similar circumstance.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
All All right, so again, we've made similar updates to final plan, just making it consistent in each of the sections that were here. And then the next section is a development plan review. And this is a section that we've added to your subdivision regulations. To what we did was we authorized development plan review in the zoning ordinance, and we added development plan review to the subdivision regulations, explaining the process here, the two different types, administrative and formal, identifying what types of applications are qualified for each of the different types. There's a section on waivers. There's a section that addresses when modifications or variances or special use permits are requested as part of development plan review. Section 7 is a certification of the application. And then 8 is the application review and decision. And that's the two different types, the formal development plan review, and then the standard sections that you see in your subdivision processes, which is the failure to act, the vested rights, and then modifying or changing a development plan review application. That language mimics the language for subdivision applications. And then we have a section on appeals, and then section 12 is design standards, and this references the existing sections within your subdivision regulations where you find design standards, and makes development plan reviews subject to those design standards. And I'll stop there because this is a whole new section. See if there are any questions.
Any questions?
This is on the general design standards. That's where we are.
So we're still in section 5. The reference I made to design standards was item 12, which is line 12 on page
39?
39. Where we are sending the applicant to those sections for the design standards. I'll keep going if there are no other questions. 5J, we inserted this section. This is the technical review committee, and this is where we are outlining that the planning board has to adopt the procedures. The administrative officer is the chair of the TRC, and this just basically speaks to the requirements of the technical review committee, what they're authorized to review. And again, when you adopt policies and procedures, you can expand upon, how the TRC operates, how they're organized, how the submissions happen, how agendas are posted, and all of those items. We did not make changes to project phasing or project impact statement. We just changed the numbering of those and moved those underneath. And then in section 6, which is the general design standards, we've made reference to the administrative officer here so that they have the same ability as the planning board with regard to the design standards. And those were the only changes that we made to those sections. And then in section 8, it's the land development and development plan review standards. We just made a change that the development plan review is reviewed in accordance with these regulations. And that's the end.
I'll ask a question.
Mr. Scum?
On the general design standards, it says the planning board or administrative officer can raise or lower these standards, it can make site visits and so forth. I don't recall making site visits to change anything, so is that something that we should be doing, that we haven't been doing? I'm just not clear on that.
Section 6, the first paragraph.
It's general design, section
Yeah.
6, the first paragraph.
You're entitled to visit the site, right? And many, many boards around the state do it as a matter of course. You can do it individually. So this isn't saying that you have to do a site visit, but
Right.
if you observe conditions that on a site visit, you know, individually, then you can raise or lower those standards.
So we can't do it with a quorum, obviously.
Yes, you can.
Oh, you can?
There are planning boards that visit every application site, you know,
But you have to
on a
post it.
Saturday morning, and it's a meeting that you have to publish, and you have to let the public visit with you. But it's happened. It's happened.
Okay, so we have to post it, so.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
But you could-
I think we did that once with Ann and Hope at one time.
Yeah.
Well, another one was what, off of Avon Road?
Yeah.
With Fort
I'm sure
Glen.
you've done it
Acorn.
I
over the
remember,
years.
now I remember one instance, but, okay, so we have to post it, so how far in advance do we have to post it?
48 hours in advance.
What do you,
I mean, we would look at each application on an individual basis, because it depends on perhaps what stage you're at, you know, but generally speaking, it's 48 hours in advance. But again, if you're just individually, I mean, you could go to site visits in groups of 3 if you want, but
okay,
you're welcome to visit any site when you're reviewing an application.
no, I understand that part, I didn't know about the quorum.
Yep,
part.
yep.
Yeah, we did have a situation going back a few years, where we did have a site visit, and it was posted because we had more than, we had a quorum, so.
So I guess my question to follow up on that is if I go visit a site and I feel as though there's some change that should be introduced to the planning board, that would be my prerogative to do that, but it would take a whole board in order to change any recommendation I would make.
Yes, I mean, there's other boards, and you may have done this. I think the zoning board individually visits sites before they rule on applications. You may say, I visited the site today, and this is what I saw, and I'd like to discuss this, and then the board as a whole would make that, you know, would take a vote on that.
I visited sites and then,
Well, I have
You
too,
know,
but I just wanted to
right.
clarify.
I know Mr. Bush has. And then, based on their observations, they make a comment, and then we discuss that, and,
Okay, that's,
yeah.
just clarifying, that's all. One other question I have, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine in one sense, but a lot of these projects that we approve, there's some timeframes that are involved, and they don't get completed within a certain time frame. Is there any way that we can put a time frame on the completion of a project? I know there's economic situations and so forth, but we've had projects in town that last longer than they should, obviously. And I'm curious as to what authority we have in order to stipulate that a project needs to be completed, or else another particular step has to be taken.
So I'm going to get back to you on that. I know that for zoning applications, conditions can expire if construction doesn't happen. Once a final plan is recorded, you know, the applicant is vested in that final plan. Other than a comprehensive permit, which has to be completed within 60 months of approval. Right, Ashley? I think between the two of us, I mean, I'll look at it again, but once a final plan is recorded, they're entitled to build the project.
No matter what.
Well, again, I'm going to look at it again. I am clear that zoning approvals can expire, and I'm also clear that comprehensive permit applications, approvals will expire, even after final plan is recorded. But in terms of all other general applications, I do not believe those expire once they're recorded.
So we're taking on a little bit more of the zoning board's position in some cases, right?
So, yeah, so with regard to expirations, so as you know, the master plan and preliminary plan, at each stage, it's vested for 2 years, and then they get 2 by-right extensions, and then they can come back to you after that and ask for additional extensions for good cause. With zoning, those approvals, excuse me, will not expire until the applicant is done with the review before this board.
Right.
Whereas before, the zoning approvals could expire, you know, notwithstanding that there was still an application pending. So now everything will expire at the same time.
Okay. So we need to clarify that, and for me,
I'll-
I just think we need to be more specific as to when everything ends, so.
Well, so for all applications before you,
Yeah.
whether they include zoning relief or not, at each level, there will be a 2-year vesting period,
Okay.
then 2 additional 1-year vesting periods by right,
That's 4
and
years.
if you allow it for good cause, additional vesting periods.
For another
So
year?
in theory, a year at a time. Okay, I mean, I think it's silent as to how long, but, you know, a year at a time is reasonable. And then when they come to preliminary, the clock starts again. The approval happens, they have 2 years plus 2 additional. So literally, if everybody takes advantage of those by right, you could have a project that takes 10 years to complete.
That's what bothers me.
Is that vesting
That's
period?
that is the state law.
No, I understand that, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to clarify it in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yep.
Why, but anyway,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
I
Excuse me,
appreciate that.
that's 2 years to begin the project or 2 years to complete it? What's the vesting period?
2 years to go to the next stage of review before it expires. Because preliminary, and then you have final plan. Once final plan is recorded,
Right.
then you have an approved plan that you're
Right.
vested in.
And then they have 2 years from,
Nope,
No,
they
no.
have an approved plan. Again, I'll look at it again, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty confident that with planning decisions,
Mm-hmm.
once that final plan is recorded, other than comprehensive permits,
yeah,
they do not expire.
oh, okay.
I'll just echo that and say I'm pretty sure without it right in front of me that what it says is that the final plan remains a valid plan until such time as it's changed or something is recorded over it. So I don't believe there is you have to start construction by such and such a time and you have to finish by such and such a time. I mean, they could have an approval and it could just
Is
sit.
that state law
Yeah,
needs to be changed.
we'll add it to the list.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Mr.
one,
Bush.
just one. Under land unsuitable for development, page 51, 9, line 9, areas with slopes in excess of 15%. Am I mistaken, were they once approved to build on slopes in excess of 15% and they've changed it again, or?
Actually, that should come out.
Oh, great. So they can build on slopes in excess of
Yes.
15%, cliffs and things like that, right?
Yeah.
I felt very hopeful when I saw that.
No, that's existing language that should have been taken out years ago.
But
So
some-
we've always ignored that because state law trumps.
Yeah.
So that needs to come out, but that was not part of Ashley's, task.
Okay.
So,
I thought someone had come to their senses at the state
No.
level, but, no, okay.
well, I don't mean, I'm not gonna characterize sentences, but.
You're being recorded, you know, that's, okay, thank you.
You can add that change to this, right?
Yeah, so I mean, we can just, if it's okay with you, we will take that out as part of the amendments. I also, just before I forget, I wanted to bring to your attention, I think Glenn had revised the fee schedule. That's gonna have to be approved by the town council. So even if you adopt this, any fees charged must be approved by ordinance by the town council.
So as I stand right now, they're just recommendations by Glenn? No, they're just recommendations.
My suggestion is that we do not include them in the regulations because
Okay.
only the town council can establish fees.
Yeah, that
I
makes
mean, they've done it that way before, but that doesn't mean it was appropriate or proper.
So do we as the planning board just adopt these amended regulations, or are we sending a recommendation to the town council to approve
No,
them?
these are your regulations, you will adopt them. Yep.
I just have one other question.
Mrs. Scott, go ahead.
We're adopting these, and we're taking some of the responsibility away from the zoning board in some instances. Is that correct?
We're not taking it away.
Well, we're not taking it away, but the state is, obviously.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear. So how does the zoning board react to that? I mean, they obviously have to do something. Is that our recommendation, that they have to accept what we approve this evening?
So the zoning ordinance is what controls the zoning board's activities. So that's already been adopted by the town council.
Okay.
So that's all handled within the zoning ordinance of what they handle now. And unified development is also included in the zoning ordinance. So it says right in the zoning ordinance that unified development projects are going to come to the planning board.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else?
I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. You have to have a public hearing on this.
It's on the agenda, it's not listed as one. Is that going to be a problem?
It's advertised as a public hearing. But it doesn't say it on the agenda. So I hate to do this, but I think you should continue the public hearing because it's not a, it's not a planning notice issue, but it's a open meetings issue, that it's not listed as a public hearing. So I think you could continue the public hearing. Are you meeting at the end of this month?
Yeah, we're meeting again in 2 weeks.
So, I mean, it's 2 weeks, you know, so I would just continue the public hearing, and then we'll make sure that it says public hearing. And you won't have to provide additional notice. And if it's okay with you, I don't think Ashley needs to be here again.
Yeah, I think we're good with that.
Unless she wants to be.
Yes, you're more than,
checking my schedule to make sure
Yeah,
could be if
you're-
needed to be, but.
you're more than welcome. If you got nothing to do that night, you know.
So at this point, I would suggest that you continue this matter to the regular meeting in January, whatever that date is.
Looks
So
like
moved.
Mr. Butler's ready to go.
Yep, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Butler, seconded by Mr. Bush. Any other discussion? Hearing none?
I don't know if that helps. Can we take a brief recess?
Sure, we'll take a brief recess.
Okay, thank you. 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think we just have to, I don't think we actually did the vote on the continuance.
Oh, for the continuance?
Yeah,
Okay.
finished the vote.
I don't think so. I think we're good. Good night.
I'll start again. Public hearing, Unified Development Review, owner, applicant, Town of Cumberland, project name Amaral Building Adaptive Reuse, location 16 Mill Street, Assessors Plat 2, Lot 96. Zoning is C1 with public water and public sewer. The town is seeking minor land development approval and variances from lot coverage, setback, and parking requirements for the adaptive reuse of the Amaral Building. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you're all familiar with the Amaral Building next door. So this is the first shot at Unified Development Review. It's a minor land development project that needs variances, so Planning Board will also be assuming the role of the Zoning Board in reviewing this project. As you know, the Amaral Building is a historic building built by the Valley Falls Company, probably as a company store. It was used as a post office and a library, and later operated as a grocery store by the Amaral family. The building has been vacant since 1990, and the town acquired it in 2007. As you know, the town received a $1 million community development block grant toward the adaptive reuse of the building as an Office of Community Health. Right now, we have about 10 organizations or so that have expressed an interest in providing services there, such as job training, heating assistance, English as a second language, and health screenings. Northeast Collaborative is the project architect, and Town Council appointed a building committee to oversee the project. It includes myself, Sarah King, Community Outreach Coordinator, and 7 public members, many of whom are engineers, and it also includes the former owner of the building, who grew up there. So our principal goal is to make the building functional and accessible. Some of the challenges were providing access to the second floor with stairs and an elevator, providing new bathrooms on both floors, and doing it in a way that did not alter the historic fabric of the building. Because it's a relatively small building, only about 1,400 square feet, we wanted to maintain the open floor plan of the interior on the ground floor and keep the upstairs bedrooms and convert them to offices. We found the most practical solution was to build everything new at the rear of the building and to keep the historic building as intact as possible. So I think the architects developed a nice package of stacked exterior bathrooms, stairs, elevator, and a 2-story lobby that ties all those new elements together. But in doing so, the project requires some variances. One is for lot coverage, where 40% is allowed. We're currently at about 65%, and we're going up to 72%, essentially due to constructing these new additions in the back. Regarding setbacks, our new bathroom slips into the town hall property about 1 foot, and the stairs on the west side are about 2 feet within the 10-foot setback. But that side faces a parking lot for the adjacent property. And I think one of the photos shows there used to be stairs on that side of the building historically. Regarding parking, so as a result of the additions, there's 6 parking spaces there now. The additions are going to take away 3 in the back, but we're going to appropriate the 4 town hall spots along Mill Street. So we had 6, we're going up to 7. Based on the square footage, we're supposed to have 9. But we're hopeful, that the building will be used by a lot of members of the community with programs and classes. So we're probably going to need more than what's required in the zoning ordinance. So there's a few options we're working through right now. One is to create satellite parking to lease parking at the Filibuster Club, which can be used by town staff free up some parking in the town hall lot. We may also try to lease some spots from the adjacent building. There's not many cars are parked at that building throughout the day. Or we can convert the town hall parking lot, all 20 parking spaces, and just make it a public parking lot that can be used, people visiting town hall and people visiting the Amaral building. And we lease the Lusitana lot across the street, the entire lot, so everyone, all town staff can park there. So we're still working that through. You know, the building's probably not going to come online till about 2026, so we have some time to figure that out. Then in terms of traffic, I mean, obviously taking a vacant building, converting it to a new use is going to create more daily trips. But the good news is we can control when and how much the building is used. You know, we can outline the schedule for the different organizations that are going to be using the building. So programs that may bring in a lot of people, maybe certain classes, we can time it, we can schedule it so it doesn't coincide with the busiest times of the day, like the school rush in the morning and the afternoon. So that's something we can calibrate when the programs and the building is up and running. So overall, I think it's a great project to bring this building back to life. I think it's going to become a real asset to the community. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions for Mr. Modica?
I do.
Mr. Scown?
First of all, I think it's a great project. Secondly, just a question in regard to the parking. I know it's a little ways down the road, but how many parking spaces are available across the street in the Lusitania parking for employees?
There's like at least 5 rows, at least 10 spaces per row.
So you got 13 that are in the town.
Right.
So if you took those, you'd have no problem putting those across
There's
the
room,
street?
right.
So, okay, so that makes sense that you could make that a public parking lot, okay.
Right.
How long is your lease at Lusitania?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think we renew it every year.
That would be important.
Yeah.
It expires next year, for instance, so.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Okay.
Is it 2, you think? I'll find out. Okay.
Mr. McDonald?
Just curious, the preparatory school that's there, has there ever been an issue with a lack of parking because of people related to the school parking in that lot?
Some mornings it can get full.
And I'm not trying to submarine this, but this potentially moving, assigning, if you will, additional spots because of this building at some point might,
We'd have to maybe the town maybe would need to assert itself a little more.
because the town does lease the lot, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Oh, I've been here, I came one day, and there was only one spot left, and it was way in the back. The whole lot was completely full. And then I came in and I said to Glenn, I said, are they having some kind of a rummage sale here or something? And I walked in, and Town Hall is completely, there was only one person, as far as somebody came to pay their taxes. The rest of the entire building, only the staff was here, and it's like, where are all these cars coming from? And
It happens
I think
every
that-
so often.
I think the parking's critical because there is gonna be more traffic on Mill Street if you don't take care of that. So you need to make sure that that lot is, you know,
It's available.
leased for a long period of time. And of course, obviously, the policing of it's gonna have to be an issue as well.
Right.
But I think, when we looked at this application initially too, I mean, it's not a huge complex. So, I mean, you're not gonna fit a ton of people in there, and a lot of the services, at least now, that are envisioned being offered in there are for folks who are lower income, you know, so people are probably gonna be taking public transportation. And I think, as you mentioned in the memo, Glenn, I mean, you do have, because it's mostly gonna be town programs, town coordinated programs, you have the ability to schedule things
Right.
after school hours, summer when school's not in session, so I think there's ways to kind of
We
work
can find
around
a
it.
sweet spot to
Yeah.
schedule things.
Would this room be used as an overflow for a meeting or
Can which be used?
this room? Chambers.
Oh, as overflow from over there?
Yes, we're
Whoops.
gonna have a workshop and they would have, maybe 30 people or so.
I suppose there's no reason why not. If we
That,
wanted to.
Go ahead.
But, I mean, I think the space on the ground floor, I think it's bigger than this.
Oh, yeah. Really?
It's 1360, and it's all open. So I think it's bigger than this.
The one-story cinder block garage and that concrete pad, is that part of this property?
Yes, it is part of the property.
And what's the garage being used for?
It's town storage, recycling bins, stuff.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, I mean, and not that you're gonna get that many more parking spaces, but that concrete pad in, the building could probably give you a few more parking spaces.
I know,
if
yeah,
it
we
was-
wanted to, we thought about it, and
Yeah.
we were trying to keep the paving down to a minimum.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we could.
Is currently drainage is good on the site, or what, is there not?
It's going to be regraded,
Okay,
so that they are working on the drainage to improve it. So actually, the grade of the parking lot is going to change a lot, at least in the front of the building. I think there's a step up, so it needs to be raised. So they are working on that.
One of the things I had discussed with Glenn just this afternoon is about reclaiming anything that can be used. And one of the things that Glenn mentioned, and I can see it right now, that wainscoting with the grill work, that's something that you want to work into the,
It's like stacked against the wall?
yeah.
Yeah, we're going to reuse that and we're going to mount it on the wall.
And then you mentioned that door that's going to be converted to a window in the back. Door really does kind of look like it's a little short,
The back door,
unless it's a case where it's a step up.
there's a step up from the
Okay,
outside.
and there's a notch, and I'm sure that that door might be able to be reclaimed for something.
We could try to find a spot, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, can't do anything about the stove. I mean, that has no
We're not keeping the
architectural
kitchen.
significance to it and all. Heating system, they're gonna be doing the heating system?
We're gonna have two kinds. On the first floor, there's gonna be floor vents.
Okay,
I don't specifically, not an HVAC, not really down with it a lot, but we're gonna have the floor vents on the ground floor. And then the mounted units on the second floor.
well, I just spotted the radiator that's in the, what looks like in the second floor, water closet. And I was wondering if, that's steam heat, so I was just wondering if you're gonna change that. Not that, it's an added expense, of course.
All right.
Is there a significant amount of abatement that needs to happen in this building?
We're gonna find out, but we remediated the asbestos 10 years ago, not long, maybe more than that. Not long after we bought it in '07. There's lead paint
Yeah.
that we're gonna have to deal with, so,
noticed,
yeah,
yeah.
it's out there.
Okay.
are we going to retain the arched windows inside for the, they are?
We're gonna keep all the windows, we're gonna rehabilitate them all.
Oh, good, great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So are you doing anything to those windows as far as reconditioning them or anything like that?
Well, we're gonna rehab them,
Yeah.
yeah, make sure they're working well. We're gonna keep them.
Well, I know we talked today also about the historic commission, and I was talking to you about, I knew we bought it from there. They had windows that they were gonna use someplace, and they were brand-new windows, but they had them so they can keep the architectural appearance and everything. So that's why I was wondering if it's something that you might find out that you're gonna have to.
If we can't repair them, then
Not replace them, but
we could
recondition them.
yeah, no, we want to rehab, if we can rehab them all, that's our plan. If we
Yeah.
can't, then we would replicate
I'd
them.
like that. Well, and in the same token, when we're looking at, you know, heating and so on, obviously, those windows probably,
We got to think about storms or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any kind of a time frame?
We're hoping to go out to bid either, hopefully the end of the month. It's looking more like February or so. And we get the bids in, and it's probably a year at least of construction.
Now, when you say go out to bid, are you looking for a site coordinator type of thing, contractor?
We're looking for, right, a contractor that's going to have historic preservation experience, that has experience working on historic buildings. You know, we're going to need a really good mason to, you know, work on the brick, and other experienced contractors.
for that, you can probably get a list of all those types of contractors from around
We
in
can,
the,
from the state.
Yeah.
And our architects, NCA,
Yeah.
they specialize in historic preservation, so they're familiar with who's out there, who
and they
does
know,
good work.
they know the pros from Dover, who they are, and, yeah.
Yeah. It's about $2 million.
It's a lot of COVID money, right, opera money, and
It's CDBG, it's the
Community
ARPA money,
Development Block
there's a bunch of sources that are going into it.
$12 million doesn't go that far these days anymore.
Yeah.
I do like the entrance to and that's in the back, the lobby. Mm-hmm. I think it's a real good place to put it.
It looks nice. Oh,
And-
I mentioned in the report, you see, there's the brick exterior, this has gone to the State Historic Preservation.
Yeah.
They're not fans of the brick, they would rather see the new additions be distinguished, have different materials than the historic building, so we have to work that out.
But even at that, somehow it's gonna have to blend in with the brickwork no matter what, whether you use brick or not.
We're leaning towards hardy plank right now,
Oh.
with a color that blends in with the brick, so we have to see how that goes. But nothing else is, the only thing that may change is the exterior. The whole footprint and layout is remaining the same.
Is the color going to stay red and dark?
Of the original building or the addition? We'll probably blend it in some kind of brick red for the additions.
Going to stay red like this?
The trim around the window, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, the whole top stay red, yeah.
I'd love it if they kept with the brick, because number one, you can't get that kind of brick that they have on that building. They
Right.
don't make it like that anymore.
Right.
So even if you use the red brick of some kind, it's gonna be different
It'll
because
look,
it's a different material. It's not,
I'm fine with the
but
brick addition,
the
but,
dimensions aren't the same anymore either.
so we're gonna see some new concepts and we'll see how it looks.
I like it.
What's the date of birth on the building?
It's around 1890,
1890?
yeah.
You were around then, right, Paul? Right.
All right, Dave, you made it later, you pay for it.
Yeah, I know, you're only a year older than me anyway, so. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Be cool.
Yeah,
Be nice to add to it.
yeah.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Before we do, this is a public hearing,
Oops, sorry.
correct? Okay. Yeah. So,
Okay.
okay, so this is the public hearing portion of this application. If there's anyone that has any questions or comments relative to this specific application, Please come forward and raise your hand and give us your name and your address for the record.
So what I'm going to do to everyone out there in the virtual land, I'm going to lower all your hands right now. And if you want to speak to this matter regarding the Amaral building, then you can re-raise your hands. Okay, so I'm just going to go in order at the top of my screen. I'm going to allow you to talk, so please state your name and address for the record. So now I'm going to allow Richard Silverman. So Richard, you're on. You're muted. If you want to speak, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
Do you have something to say about this matter? Okay, I'm going to Jack W. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Roy fucks dogs. Sandra has massive mommy milkers. Someone in this hall has AIDS. AIDS hall. The chairman has AIDS. Everyone in this hall has AIDS. Mr. Kenneth Bush did 9/11. Gay guy.
Okay, why doesn't he go? Karen Williams, you have one chance.
Hey, I have a question. I'm Cameron
Do you
Williams.
have anything to say, Cameron?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, I am Cameron Williams of 17 Claremont Street, Cumberland, Rhode Island, and I'd like to say circumflex, 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 circumflex.
Rupert.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to say that David,
Anything to say?
thank you for having me on. Thank you to the council. I live on 21 Monica Drive. My name is Rupert Chargles, and I'm here to say
Markey. No. There's 310 right now. Oh, no, I don't know anyone. There's 20. No, no. Markey, do you have anything to say? Jack. I have 19. Jack, kickoff.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say very briefly, regarding that gentleman's request to shift the proposed door into a window, I really strongly believe that such a thing would be a waste of city expenses and would plague an already unmanageable budget. We've seen that budget really go down in the last few years, but in the last few weeks, Taylor's thong has been rendered brown from days of refusing to wash. Every movement has
Is that?
John B.
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. What's your name?
Oh, yeah, I was,
Who's the public?
Don't. Marky Bruised.
Look at these names. You think they
Marky Bruised. Going once. Edward Newgate.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We barely hear you.
All right. Sorry about the microphone troubles there. I just wanted to say these boys, they'll be done with the show in just a few weeks. It's
That's a different meeting.
Jeb Neptron.
Hi, Jeb Neptron. I live on 12 Tanglewood Drive in Cumberland. And I wanted to refer to the proposal to add the brick. There was the brick, and then they wanted to add the stuff that wasn't the brick. And I think those old buildings are beautiful. And I think it's a travesty to even add anything kind of new to that. You see this new development going up, and I just think it just looks terrible. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jeb. Gerald W.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cunt.
Did you make this say? Oh, that was it? Terrific. Okay. Let me get rid of you. See, they just can't get just.
Can I ask a question? The remote capability for people to join in remotely, is that by town policy that we do this?
Yes. It's, well, no, it's just a policy that we do it.
Okay. Are we the only board that's had this happen, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, beginning in COVID, there were people hacking into meetings. But as far as I know, this is the only board that's been, and they can't vote. You could continue this matter until your next meeting. I mean, we don't recognize any of the people on, we've looked to see if there's any people that have, you know, a first and last name. So obviously we want Cumberland residents to be able to comment. Perhaps you could continue this to the next meeting, continue the public hearing so that if anybody does want to speak, they can speak then.
I fully support members, citizens in the town being able to participate in meetings, but I don't believe that's what happened here. I'll just offer a personal opinion that was not legitimate commentary by members of the public that I could tell. Funny names cut off in mid-sentence. And it was advertised as a public hearing, and with the exception of maybe one or two of those gentlemen that spoke, that may have been legitimate, the others, in my judgment, were not. So we've already had a public hearing, and is there,
Right.
Are there people still in the queue?
Yeah, and I would not want to limit legitimate public comment. So my suggestion is that you continue this matter for 2 weeks to your regularly scheduled meeting, and you can continue with legitimate public comment.
How many are in the queue?
38.
I make a motion that we continue the meeting for 2 weeks to our regular January meeting.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler, I have a second by Mrs. Scown and Ms. Proctor. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Second.